Okay, so we have aborted the. I think I'm French, Frenchifying my English. We've talked about characters and books. Let me talk about places, because there are a bunch of things that do go together, so I might jump up a little bit around what I'm talking about. So, we are centered in Dublin. That is the main place this story takes place. There's Chapelizod, which is the place that he lives, and then we've got the house and the home, which are a mirror and reflection of Mr. Duffy. We've got the distillery, and then we've also got the places that he goes to where he meets Mrs. Sinico. So he does go out to the rotunda. He goes out to concerts. There is also the place where they meet, the little cottage outside of Dublin once again. So there are a few places. Most of them take place outside. So there is this idea of living on the outskirts again. Alright. We have time. Time and routine. Time and routine. So the entirety of Mr. Duffy's life is based on routine, on repetition, on not taking risks. We can say that this is quite linked to iteration. It is very monotonous. There is a sense of monotony. There's safety and comfort in these habits. Then we have the opposite, which is singularity. I think it won't be backwards, right? So we've got iteration and singularity. So the singularity, we have 3 different crises or interruptions. First, let me make sure that I'm not forgetting anything here. Okay, actually, this goes with what I'm saying. So, we have first the description of his house, who he is. We have the fact that he abhors anything that has to do with physical or mental disorder. My cat won't stop leaving me alone. We've got the saturnine description on line 21. Then we've got a little bit of a description, a physical description. So we've got his cheekbones also gave face a harsh character. But there was no harshness in the eyes, which I think is important because we do say the eyes are the windows to the soul. Wait, is that right? I think something like that. Let's see. He has an unamiable mouth. Basically, he does not look like he's a nice person, but then the eyes kind of betray that. Alright, and then, line 30, we have the beginning of the explanation of his life, what his life is like. So, he had been for many years cashier of a private bank in Baggot Street. So that's another place, Baggot Street. Every morning. So we've got this sort of repetition. So every morning he came from Chapelizod by tram. It is important to note that there is a sort of repetition of the train throughout the story. Train, tram. Then we dive deep into his routine. So at midday he went and he took his lunch. And then we have what he eats. Then at 4 o'clock he was set free. He dined in an eating house. And then blah blah blah. His evenings were spent either before his landlady's piano or roaming about the outskirts of the city. Once again, not in the city, but on the outskirts. Then we have a glimpse. He likes Mozart's music. These were the only dissipations of his life. Then we have this quote. He had neither companions nor friends, church nor creed. He lived his spiritual life without any communion with others, visiting his relatives at Christmas and escorting them to the cemetery when they died. So basically, the only time he interacts with society, and notably his family, Félix, laisse-moi tranquille, is during holidays or funerals. So once again, we've got this death illusion that pops back up. Let's see. What else? Communion. There is, throughout the entire story, a bunch of religious little illusions as well. There's a word for that, isn't there? Is it allegory? I don't know. I haven't studied those words in about, let's see, what year are we? Maybe like 6 years? Alright. Therefore, what else? The quote, "An adventureless tale," line 42. His life is just boring, it's dull, it's just routine. But then, line 43 comes the one evening. So here we have the separation from the James Duffy, he, and it goes one evening. Introduction of Mrs. Sinico. So this is the encounter, and this is the only time in the entire story where we have her thoughts or her communication. Like, this is the only dialogue. It might be the only quotations as well in the entire dialogue, in the entire story. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is literally the only time we have quoted dialogue. And it is the only time we have her point of view. So, there he goes. They meet. Goes right back to he took and he met. Goes right back into his point of view. So, he meets her, and then line 49, while they talked, he tried to fix her permanently in his memory. He is so not used to meeting people and to making friends, basically, that he doesn't know how to interact with her. The fact that she seems so little awkward means that he himself probably did feel awkward, and he wants to keep a memory of her forever. Memory plays a role again at the very end, so I do think that's important that it's in the beginning and it comes back at the end. Then we have the introduction of the daughter, and then we go on to have talk about the eyes. So the eyes were very dark blue and steady. Their gaze began with a defiant note, but was confused by what seemed a deliberate swoon of the pupil into the iris, revealing for an instant a temperament of great sensibility. So that is, I think, important because it totally explains her character. But we have a lot, we have three whole lines, if not four, of description of the eyes. So I think that's really notable because there is not much description of physical attributes throughout the story. We have the very beginning, at the end of the second paragraph, where it kind of explains what he looks like, but then 4 lines just on the eyes is quite important. There is this idea of the bodily features being emphasized, once again kind of denoting their difference, because he's totally not focused on that, but she is very in tune with her emotions, and she lives inside her body, whereas he lives outside of it. Then we've got that he met her again a few weeks afterwards. Then, meeting her a third time by accident, he found the courage to make an appointment. Here we have the beginning of a new routine that is getting settled. This was the first of many meetings, and then we've got the word always. They met always in the evening, and chose the quarters for their walks together. So the installation of the routine, and then we've got the Captain Sinico encouraged his visits, thinking that his daughter's hand was in question. He had dismissed his wife so sincerely from his gallery of pleasures that he did not suspect that anyone else would take an interest in her. I think that's so sad. That's so sad. Mrs. Sinico is isolated. Her husband doesn't care about her, and he literally thinks that no one would come to court her because it's so out of his mind that Mr. Duffy could be interested in her, that he thinks his daughter is the one that he's interested in. So, then we've got neither he or she had had any such adventure before, and neither was conscious of any incongruity. Little by little, he entangled his thoughts with hers. He lent her books, provided her with ideas, shared his intellectual life with her. She listened to all. So, we have this reminder that he only does it for basically his own wants and his own needs. They only share things on the intellectual level. There's no physical touch or anything. Let me dive into the relationship aspect. I think that's quite important, and I'm kind of touching on it right now anyway. Actually, let me finish going to the next part. So then, line 74, she became his confessor. That again is a religious allusion. Then there is a bit of talk of politics. Once again, keeping it on this like intellectual level. Okay. Then, so we have the first, what did I say? First interruption was the encounter. And then we've got more installation of routine. He went often to her little cottage. Often they spent their evenings alone, their thoughts entangled. So they really did become, like, they became real friends. And then there's the line, so this is line 87. Her companionship was like a warm soil about an exotic. Meaning he's like a plant, and he's taking all the nutrients from the soil. He's basically feeding on her. So he's taking everything he can from her intellectually, but doesn't really give her anything back, right? Then there's the dark, discreet room, isolation, and then there is music still, so whatever happens, there is kind of music throughout the entire thing. Then he caught himself listening to the sound of his own voice. That, again, feels like third person, like he's living outside of his body. But there is he thought that in her eyes. So first of all, he's projecting what he thinks onto her. And then the eyes again are coming back. Would ascend to an angelic stature. Angels are sexless, and in his mind he's projecting this vision. This is really quite selfish. Honestly, there's nothing else to add. He attached the fervent nature of his companion more and more closely to him. So kind of really grasping onto her in this way of like, oh yeah, intellectual bonding, but nothing else. Insisting on the soul's incurable loneliness. We cannot give ourselves, it said, we are our own. So really like insisting on this loneliness aspect of like being alone. And then, second interruption, we've got Mrs. Sinico, who craves for more, caught up his hand passionately and pressed it to her cheek. Oh my god, that was the thing not to do. This, to him, is an unacceptable, unconceivable aggression from her end. It is a complete shock to him, and it ruptures the way that... Oh my gosh, stop it. Stop it. You're getting me out of my thoughts. First of all, there's a rupture in narration. And this break in distance and the emotional distance and the physical distance breaks the intellectual bond that he has been cultivating with her. He feels betrayed by her as if she deceived him. This aspect of the deceitfulness will come back at the end again. So there is kind of like a cycle. The entire thing is a cycle. Broken their implicit something agreement. I can't read what I wrote. It's very, very tiny. It's like illegible. I write such tiny notes. Okay. Then guess what? Oh my god. This second paragraph on this page, what does it start with? Mr. Duffy was very much surprised. So this, boom, total, shatters his whole world. Can't believe that she did that to him. He did not wish their last interview to be troubled by the influence of their ruined confessional. Once again, religion. And the interview, so their friendship is just an interview. It's such an interesting word to use. Line 100. There is, let's see. Okay, right here. Line 102. They agreed to break off their intercourse. Every bond, he said, is a bond to sorrow. So, man, he just thinks people are out to hurt him. And they agreed, super ironic, because that is his decision. It is not hers. It is not hers, because she fucking suffers from this. Sorry, cursing. I'm passionate, what can I say? And I also curse a lot. Oopsie. Okay, and then, line 104, she began to tremble so violently. Fearing another collapse on her part, he bade her goodbye quickly and left her. How? Mais c'est lâche! He is a coward. He cannot handle emotions. This woman is so heartbroken. Her emotions are transcending the emotional aspect, the emotional plane, and are having physical consequences on her body. She's trembling so bad. And he leaves. And a few days later, she gives him back his music through a parcel. So they do not see each other again. So here we have the two interruptions. Then we've got the third one. But guess what? It's 17 minutes, so I'm going to pause right here and record another one. Segment number 3 coming up.